Working now?
She's got on Facebook, she knows. Right, I'll open the meeting. Well, from here we're still looking at the moment, we can probably turn up. So I won't ask for apologies just yet. Public forum is not necessary, we have no public here. Are there any conflicts of interest tonight?
Here she is.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, Nicky, I started what happened in the room. Right, no conflicts of interest. Confirmation of the minutes of the Oxford-Ohoka Community Board 2nd of September 2020. Somebody move that those two records of the meeting, please. Right, here, seconder. Right. Can you all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Matters arising. Thank you.
There's just been a bit of conversation in our local social media about someone had asked where the speed limit or the speed indicator signs went, which I've informed them that we've got, I think, 3 sets. Is that right? Yeah, we've got 3 sets that get moved around the district, and the ones that were in Southbrook have been moved to Ohoka. I believe those are the ones. And so there was just some discussion about that, and also that camera that I asked you about. It has gotten noticed, and they wanted to know if it was official or not, which I informed them that it wasn't. And also that whilst it had the desired effect, whoever it is or whatever it is, it has moved a problem elsewhere. And so I've just asked that person to either come and see us today, which I don't see them here, so, or maybe talk about that later and see if there's anything that we can do. But as you know, we're all aware there's limited things that we as a council can do, but there are some things depending on where it is and what's happening. So yes, there is a transference of boy racer activity from one place to another at the moment, somewhere, but I haven't been told which street yet. How are you finding it, Sarah, at the 5 intersections?
I went through again on the way here, because we're obviously the new fresh marks, and then they go right up with Hughes as well.
Yeah, so just to be aware that we have got some issues in the area with boy racers and questions being asked about the camera, but not entirely negative, because as I said, I think it's having its desired effect of making people wonder if that's a good place to do stupid things. So I think that's it. Sorry.
Thank you, Nicky. Right, the deputation and presentations are are none. During business there is none. Moving on to report for recycle stands and street furniture.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here to talk to you about the bike stands and also a seat. Both of these projects, which I guess you'd say have kind of come from the board as potential things to look into. I'm going to take the report as read. You'll see that in terms of the bike stands, we did have a meeting where myself and Ian from the roading team met with Shirley Thomas and Wendy to look at potential options, and that led to the creation of the plan, which is in the back of your report, and led to this report being written to outline how that could be achieved using the $2,000 that the board have already allocated towards bike stands and a further allocation of budget from the road and minor improvements and walking and cycling budget to cover the rest to get that there. In terms of the seat, that was another one potential project raised by board members which we looked into, and we've spoken to the businesses, or yes, there were two businesses where it was proposed outside of. Both of them were quite keen with the idea. Both of them felt it would be quite well used, not only by people walking on the street, but by their patrons, or as one of them put it, the husbands of their patrons, but that would require a bit of allocation of budget towards that from your general landscaping budget, which you do have enough available should you wish to. Happy to answer any questions.
Have you approached the men's shed and had a price?
So I've approached the men's shed and talked about it with their, I can't remember, the chairperson, I think it was. They were, as I put it in the report, they were very keen to get involved, but they wanted a bit of time to talk through with exactly what the design could be, how much it's going to cost. So we haven't got a price from them yet, and that's why in the report I suggested that the board could allocate what a normal seat would be worth, and then we can work with the men's shed to find what they can do, and hopefully find it a lot. They're very confident they could get it significantly lower than what we would normally have from a supplier, and then any savings from that would go back into the kitty for reallocation at your next opportunity, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Shirley?
Thank you. We did discuss that the stands be similar to the ones that's at the town hall and the thing. What would the price be if they were the double ones that are there rather than a single?
So Joan and I have spoken to Ian, who priced them up, and he's confirmed to us that they are the same, same type as what's outside, so they would be in keeping with that.
Oh, thank you.
Wendy, do you have a question?
Just a question I'd like to ask Shirley, please. Shirley and Thomas.
Yep.
So, through you.
Yep.
Shirley and Thomas, do you want all the stands this year or not? Do you want just to trial them out in various areas, or do you want to put them all in?
I think having the 9 there would really be an overkill at this stage, and perhaps we can do it in stages rather than all at once.
You got a comment, Thomas?
Probably a follow-on question for that is that are we actually getting the stands cheap because we are getting a bulk deal rather than just a price for a single one?
I think there would be a small cost savings because we are buying multiples and not just a single stand. Probably the other thing to think about is if we establish staff on site, then the cost of actually getting them there is part of that, and the more stands we put in, the more cost effective it is. I think also the number of stands, my understanding is that's been, I guess, loosely agreed, knowing the demand that there is up there. So, outside the likes of the bakery, there's quite high demand.
Thank you, Joanne. I just threw that question just as a teaser to see how the rest of them felt about that. So my question to you then is that, as you've said, it will be a cost saving for us then if we do the whole lot in one go.
It would be slightly cheaper than doing it in 2 stages, but the decision at the end of the day is what the board.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
Financially, with the cutback and discretionary spending, is that still able to be done?
Yes, it is. So we have our minor safety walking and cycling budget that is available, and as I've noted, we noted in the report, there is funding there that we can use.
Julie?
Can I just ask about the location? I understand that someone went to see one of the businesses and it says that we're going to put it in the garden, basically in the garden, and they have suggested that that be relocated to where the yellow lines are, just down a bit further. Are you aware of that?
So in Kennedy, in my roving team, we visited all 6 of the businesses where these are proposed. My understanding is 5 of those we're very happy with where they are proposed to go. There was one that wanted a small change, and Ian has assessed that from a footpath perspective and has said that that's still appropriate. I understand it's not a big move, it's just a small move.
Okay. Is that?
Do we talk about this seat now as well?
Yeah.
Because just with the recommendation, there's no recommendation about option 2. So I think the board needs to look at that as well.
I'll take that as a question. The reason option, that option 1 is in the, I guess it's a recommendation, is that as staff, when we looked at it, there's not huge benefits between option 1 and 2, but option 1 was certainly the preferred option in terms of the owner of the building, of the pharmacy and Jazz. So he came back and said, as the owners, we would prefer it to be an option 1. And so we felt, well, if there's not a great difference in which one's better over the other, then it's and the owner is saying they prefer this, and that would be the one we would recommend. But that's up to the board to discuss in that respect.
Okay.
Just good point. Just with regard to those options, I would think that option 1 in my view, would probably be the better option, just because if you've got people on mobility scooters, due to the angle that door is on, it can be quite difficult if they're coming in from the right side for them to turn around and swing wide enough to actually get into the door to the pharmacy. So perhaps option 1 might be the more accessible place to put it. Although, it might offend some people's OCD not to be perfectly centered in the middle of the building. It's probably better to have it kind of off to the side so that people can navigate it. Would that be fair?
Sarah?
I'm assuming that an option of having it under the veranda is because it's not council land. Is that correct?
Yes, so we would look to be putting it in council land. Otherwise, it gets a bit tricky in terms of ownership and that sort of thing. So,
Thomas?
Talking of OCD, but would it be an option to actually centre it in that sort of bay of the building? I don't know what you call it, but between that sort of pillar thing and the rock wall at the end, would it be an option to centre it?
it certainly would be. We can centre it. The reason we've kind of pulled it, I guess, against that pillar is around that accessibility side of things. It leaves a wider gap at the end, whereas at the centre you've got kind of two narrower gaps. So it just does help with that.
And just another question on that. If it was further down towards the brick wall, would it not give the shop owner a bit more window visibility for their, shopping and stuff?
Yes, quite possibly. I actually stood out there just as a southerly blew through Oxford, and Jan and I stood out there and looked at it. It was actually her suggestion that it went against where I've put it there. She sort of said people do come, when they come out on the street, they kind of come to the earliest opportunity to get under the veranda if it's raining, so it doesn't, and she didn't seem too concerned with it blocking access or anything like that, so that's why it's in that spot at the moment.
Shall I test the meeting?
Radio.
Shall I test the meeting then?
Okay, you test the meeting.
I'll move the recommendation that from A through to H, with the option 1 being the attachment as shown.
Mark will second that. Any further discussion?
I have right to speak on it. We've gone through this pretty thoroughly, the Oxford Community Board members and myself. And as long as we've got the okay as from the building owner and the people that are renting the place, then I just feel that we can go ahead and do. It's going to be an asset there, so that will be the seat, but also the bike stands will be used. Thank you.
Right. Right.
As a secondary, my comments would be, look, I'm pleased with 9 public bike stands. I think it's great to see landlord and the business owners who are supportive. It's fantastic. We raised it at OPEC. I think the OPEC group were quite happy with it as well being put in. I think it's a good news story too that we need to get some media coverage that we're spending this money and improving some facilities in Oxford for visitors. So, yeah.
Right. Any further comments? Yes, Nikki?
I'd just like to say, well done, guys. That's between what you found location-wise and the staff is a really thoughtfully set out proposition. I like the fact that we have economies of scale by doing the 9 all at once, and the very thoughtful placement of the bench. My hat's off to you. I think that'd be a great thing for Oxford, and I'm happy to support it. Thanks.
I'll start off with the bike stand. This is something that both myself and Shirley have probably had a lot of communication with residents over probably the last 6 years. To be honest, it's probably a little bit overdue, because at the moment the only ones in Oxford are at the service centre, and they're up on the veranda, and at the town hall, and they're on the veranda as well. So the really high use areas, such as the bakeries and the shops, don't have any bike facilities at the moment, so I think it's going to help to tidy it up on a Sunday when there are bikes strewn everywhere, and also allow people to go in and have somewhere to tie them up and have a peace of mind that they're not going to get nicked while they're in one of the shops. And in terms of the seat, I agree with the comments already made. I think it's an asset to the township. I don't think there's a lot of seating along that main street at the moment, so I think it's a really great addition to the main street.
Right. Any more? Right. All those in favour of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Yeah. Picnic tables are mandatory. I presume you're Tory tonight.
Yeah, well, I'm not Tory as you can tell, but I am standing in for her tonight. So, as you see, you've got the report ahead of you. It's quite a simple report in terms of it's carrying on from the information you will be familiar with around Mandeville, the corner development that's gone on there in the car park that's been provided, or car parking area. And there there was a request for a plan to be provided to the board showing where a bit more of the amenity seating would go in the wider space of that corner reserve. So Tori's drawn that up, identified where she would propose the two picnic tables, which have been kindly donated by the Residents Association, would be best located. And we've spoken with James Ensor, who is, leading the charge on these. He's indicated that the Residents Association is happy to, go about organising the installation of the concrete pads for the tables to sit on, but they appreciate the cost of the materials, so perhaps the cement and things, if the board was able to meet those costs, and he's estimated that would be around $500. And taking into account you have allocated money from the general landscaping budget for the seat, I can say there still is budget available to cover that should you wish to from your general landscaping budget. And I have spoken to James around the health and safety requirements of council in terms of making sure that work is done by someone who's site-wise registered and the likes, and he's confirmed that that is available and under control. So.
Just off to the pub after this.
So I'll take the rest of the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Sure.
Are the Mandeville Residents Association aware of the proposed sites and tables?
I'm not familiar with it in depth with the communication Tori's had with them, but I believe that is the case. When I was talking to James, I spoke through, he had a couple of questions around making sure the trees were, so the seats were in a spot where they would get some shade and things like that. So we spoke through that and he seemed quite happy with the location. So I can't really answer more to that, but...
Anything?
So James has been spoken to recently.
About 3 days before the agenda closed for the president.
Okay. And so just to clarify, so the $500 indicated cost of materials is for concrete? And the tables are donated? That was my understanding. I'm just wasn't quite done. Thank you.
Thomas.
Just a question about the report. In 1.2 it mentions that these tables to be included in the development plan for the reserve, which had previously been approved by the board. I don't think we have approved the development plan, have we? This is the first time I've actually seen this plan with been tabled, to my knowledge, and probably going on from that, have the Residents Association, or were the Residents Association consulted with before that car parking area was developed?
I'm not entirely sure around the wording of that, although I think that there might be more meaning in terms of the proposal for accepting the tables into that reserve was, so not necessarily a development plan of how they arranged it, more that the board was in favour of accepting the tables.
Okay.
As opposed to, this is the first time you've seen the plan in this form. Yes, correct.
Yeah, I'm a current member of the Renewal Residents Association, and this is the first time I've seen this.
Right. Usually.
Sorry, want me to repeat that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Renewal Residents Association, and this is the first time that I've seen anything to do with the reserve.
Right, have you got more? Right.
I was just going to say, if the board chooses to, you could add a recommendation around circulating it to the Mandeville Residents Association for comment. But yeah, sorry, I can't comment in terms of when or how it
just as a question, that if this goes back to the Residents Association, then it's actually going to hold up putting the picnic tables in, which has been probably almost a year since they were first mooted that they go in. So that's something the club, the community board needs to consider.
No.
Under 1.2, this final proposal made by the Renewal Residents Association. So this request for these two seats in that location has come from the MRA, initiated by them. That's the question I'm asking, because their internal politics of who's telling who is really not our interest. But if the MRA have said we want this, and James is looking at the MRA, then if that's the official line from them, then surely our job is purely just to approve the funding if that's where they want the seats going. That's my only comment on it.
I think the confusion there is, so the proposal from the Residents Association to provide the tables has come from them, but the actual locations where they would be sited has been recommended by Tori Staplefoot, who's the landscape architect in our green space department. So I believe Ray's more asking around the siting of that the association haven't necessarily seen exactly where they would be sited, as opposed to them understanding that the tables are coming from them. Is that correct?
Thank you.
My thoughts around this are that we have consulted with the Mandeville community just prior to Christmas, and this plan had been consulted upon as far as the parking and the pathway and where parking was going to be, etc. So I believe that the concept roughly for this reserve has already been consulted upon, and at that time, over a year ago, these tables had been donated by James. That photo in your report is actually my photo that I took and gave you a year ago. So was this Tori's idea as to where these should go based on feedback from James?
I think likely the other way around, in terms of from her experience as a landscape architect, the best sites she believed they would be in, and then that's been communicated back to James, who's agreed that they're good spots.
Right.
The car parking has probably more than doubled the capacity for the area. I thought that the aisle spaces and the aisle widths were a little bit narrow after I saw the bollards in place, never seeing a plan before it actually happened. But going down there on Saturday when it was virtually full last weekend, there seemed to be plenty of room even for the big four-wheel drive. So I think that's been a fantastic addition to the overall concept. Just one question about that. It was going to be sealed or chipped. Is that still happening?
I don't believe there was ever budget allocated to chipping or sealing it, as far as my understanding from Grant McLeod, the Green Space Manager.
The original plan for that, due to the type of soil and whatnot that is in this place, it being quite stony, it was never meant to be a formalized sealed car park. It was always just going to be, if anything, a little bit of chip if necessary, but because that is quite light stony ground, it was always just meant to be left in the way that it is now, because it is more in keeping with the rural area and our budget.
Just one last question. There was talk earlier of landscaping in this particular area. Is that still in the budget? Rather than just having car parks and a couple of tables, it is very close to Tram Road. There is just a farm fence that's been put there, which will probably stop children running out there. But is there any type of screening proposed? And the trees that are there that are straggling, is there anything in this year's budget for those to be either trimmed or removed?
Currently, in terms of what's planned, is just within what's on that development plan you've got ahead in front of you. That can, I guess, that can be altered or screen planting added into that plan should the board wish, but that would require funding allocation because there's no allocated funding towards that. And my understanding is that we've got no current planting budgets due to the COVID impacts of COVID and so if the board wants to do that, it could be a potential project for your general landscaping budget. You don't have probably enough money to do that at this moment, but you will get likely an allocation next year. In terms of the trees, my understanding is that we've had our arborists out there and making sure the trees are safe, and that work has been done. Short of that, I don't think there's any current plan to be chopping any more out or doing any more work unless developments arise where one might be deemed as unsafe or concerns are raised.
Right. Somebody like to put a motion, please? Nikki?
I would like to move that we accept the recommendation A through D, that we install the 2 picnic tables as per recommendations. I think that, this is a long time in coming. These tables have been sitting at the platform waiting for waiting for something to happen for about a year now. And they've just been looking over the fence longingly, wanting to go to their new place. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll see that.
About to jump on the point of order.
I know. I went, there's no secondary. Whoops, I thought you said.
Jumping up.
Well, I won't speak.
I thought that the tables sitting at the platform were waiting for a train rather than trying to look across the paddock. Any further discussion?
Sarah does everything on.
Sarah seconded.
June.
I just think great. I think it's a great thing. Awesome. Looking forward to some more in the future when we get some more money.
I'd just like to make a comment. It's actually good to see community-led projects that aren't relying on council to hold their hand and do everything for them. And it's great to see that the Manual Residents Association have sort of worked around the health and safety rules so that they can actually do this themselves. I think it's a great initiative.
Anything further? Right. All those in favour of the motion, say aye, please.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Grant. So we're going to get people in here for another one. Canterbury. Yeah, discretionary funding. Right. We have 2 applications for discretionary funding. The Waimakariri Woods Golf Club, which we had tabled, but there's now back on the agenda. And the Ohoka School towards the cost of new high jump equipment. Nikki, you want to speak?
Before we get underway with that, my son goes to Ohoka School, so would that constitute, I believe that would constitute a conflict of interest. But may I, if not voting, but may I speak to this at all when we get to it? Okay.
Right.
Second conflict of interest, my grandson goes there. So,
Okay. Anybody else got kids there?
Not Renewal. It's getting a bit solid.
Okay. Just start with...
Not that I know of.
Back with them Make it laugh. They just smile today.
Right, so somebody would like to put a motion on these two, please.
I'll move. Probably do it separately. I'll move that we approve $500 towards the Waimakere Golf Club, towards the cost of their replacing their greens mower. Then everyone can vote on it. Yeah.
Ray, second that. Any discussion? Yes, Mark.
I'm happy to support it, as long as they understand that they've got a time frame, otherwise they'll lose it, because there is still a big funding gap in that from other major organisations. So as long as they're aware that if they run out of time with us, they'll need to reapply, I'm happy to support that. Yeah.
Probably on that, I think they're actually a pretty proactive club, so I have full confidence that they will do it. If they've said they can do it, I'm fully supportive that they can do it. I think in the past they've done a wonderful job. The grounds are really well maintained, and I think in the past when they've proposed projects such as the water filtration system in the past, they've been really proactive in their fundraising. So I definitely think they'll be able to make that fundraising target.
Okay. Any further comment?
Yeah, I'll make a comment.
Mindy?
Even so, with when it came to the ceiling of the Easter Road, they were very proactive about that. So that's an extra cost that they are covering now with their additional expenses. So I had no problem with them at all.
Shirley, have you got a comment? No. Okay, we've put the motion to the vote. Everyone in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we need someone to do a motion for the Ohoka School. Shirley.
I would like to move that we approve a grant of $488.43 to the Ohoka School towards the cost of purchasing new high jump equipment.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Clarification. Can we get more than what they actually say in there or not? Because it's 488.
Okay, you can give them.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Right. Any further discussion? Yes, keep your hand down. Alright. That's actually this left. All those in favour of that motion?
Aye.
Say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. That's 480.
Yeah, that's what Shirley said, isn't it?
Through you, Mr. Jefferson, I just want to make sure it was 488 that you...
Well, that's what they've got in here.
Yes.
And there's some seats there as well.
Yeah. We don't do sense.
Because we make no sense.
Yeah, just the things that they can use it because of the equipment they have.
No. You just voted.
We've moved on.
The motion has been passed. The motion is passed, so you may speak.
You should have been.
I'm allowing you to speak briefly.
Thank you, because they've got holes all over their budgets right now, and they have used this equipment. My kids have been there for 14 years, and it's always been the same equipment, and it's never been any good, and it's getting worse, and it's in desperate need of replacement. So thank you very much for those that have supported this.
I thought that primary school didn't go for 14 years.
My children They're not special, they're just, 5 years between them. They are special.
Right, I propose that we go have a meeting and into a workshop. And Lindy, you could, that's Maria, already. Oh, you do, really? Yes. Mark, second, all in favour? Yes, Gary. Maria.
Sorry, before we start, is this the same as the one that we were emailed out?
Yes.
Okay, just making, because it was a couple of days difference. I thought that might have been updated, but no.
Thank you. The council earlier this week adopted the cemetery strategy, and this is the next part. So the policy is what guides the day-to-day operation of the cemeteries, whereas the strategy was more for future planning, making sure that the council had enough land and reserves for cemeteries. So it's the rules for operating the cemetery, plus also to protect the public health and the environment. So this is an early draft of the cemetery policy, and that's going to give the boards the opportunity to contribute to the content of the policy before it goes out for public consultation early in the new year. There are a couple of points that Lindley asked me to draw your attention because they're new and different to what we're doing now. The first one is clause 4, and it's about recognition of religious cultural requirements, and what this clause in the policy is suggesting that if there were a particular religious or cultural group that wanted land set aside for their group, then the council would facilitate that happening. It's not something that happens at the moment. The old early part of the Renewal Lawn Cemetery did have religious denominations in it, but it was a wee bit problematic because it was very hard at the start to divvy up how much space each religious denomination would require. So we found that some used up their space and encroached into others, and others still have space available. So in the rest of the council cemeteries and in the new part of the Renewal Cemetery, we're not doing that. But there could be a time when a cultural or religious group did ask for land to be set aside, and this is allowing for that to happen. The other new clause is clause 12, and that's regarding the other organisations ceding cemeteries to the council. So if there's a cemetery that's managed by a church or a trust, it's outlining some, guidelines or rules about the council taking over those cemeteries when that organisation is unable to manage them. And in the review of the Burial and Cremations Act, which is before Parliament, well, it's still before Parliament, obviously now they've stopped for the election, but that the last draft of that did require that councils had to take over cemeteries that were offered to them. It's a brief summary. I'm guessing everybody's had a read of this. I'm happy to note down your comments and answer your questions.
Really good.
With regard to the memorial seats that if anyone wants them, just regarding will they be allowed to have plaques on them, and if so, who would be responsible for those? A wee brass plaque.
So generally, the seat would be donated by a family, and they would meet the cost of that.
will they be allowed to have memorial plaques on them?
Yes. It would be a standard, a small standard plaque.
I'm just wondering, I know that at this stage there is no pets allowed in cemeteries, but I'm wondering if this is going out to consultation, if it might be worth seeing if it is something that the public want to be able to happen. Because I mean, I know a lot of owners that have a dog or owners that would like to take their dog to, where they own them when it used to be, it has passed away, or and it's just a comfort thing for that person to go. I find it doesn't sit well with me that you're not allowed to take a pet there, and I don't know if I would be alone in that. I know maybe some people might have issues with dog poo, but I mean, there's obviously ways around that, and you would hope that people would take responsibility for that. So that was just one thing. And the other thing around the non-compliant memorabilia, it seems to cover pretty much everything. So anything that people are allowed to put on there. That's great.
We try to limit the amount of memorabilia in the cemeteries, and I got a good reminder of the reason why that's the case when I visited the Renewal cemetery before work on Monday, and there were plastic flowers and bits and pieces all over the lawn because there'd been strong winds the previous night, and the lady from Delta was just going around with this huge plastic bag. Where something was beside a grave, she was putting it back. Where it wasn't, she was just putting them in the plastic bag and taking them away. So I guess we're trying to limit it to things that are small and are liable to stay where they're put. But we do concede that over the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, there has been more stuff left at graves, and I'm expecting that will change in the public consultation. I guess the important things are that we eliminate stuff that can be broken. Solar lights people leave, but they attract people at night, so I'm expecting that will widen what people can leave, but the important things are that they're things that will remain at the gravesite if there's a wind, or they don't cause offence to anybody else, and that they are within the area of that grave and they're not encroaching onto others, because that does cause upset to some people.
Mr. Chair, just with regard to dogs and cemeteries, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty positive that the dog control bylaw and the dog policy is the limiting document there, and they were consulted on in the last 2 years, I think. So in terms of managing that, it's through that mechanism.
Thank you.
Just in clause 11.1 on cemetery maintenance, there's a sentence in here that says, Council may remove any trees, shrubs, or other vegetation that have been planted on a burial site or within the cemetery without Council's written consent. Now, does that read correctly? Is it meant to say without the family's consent, or is it meaning without asking the elected members?
If somebody has planted something without the consent of the council could remove it.
So council as in
need to
staff
rewrite it. Yes.
Yeah, because it's saying without council can remove them without council's written consent. It's kind of confusing. So we
need to maybe rewrite that because we wouldn't be coming to council with any time that happened.
I was thinking, that mean us, or is that just a typo and it was meant to mean the family's written consent, or, okay, thanks.
Generally, if we were asked if somebody could plant something, we would decline it at the outset, but sometimes things just pop up.
In that case, would you actually, if there was, like a rose bush planted, would you be telling the family that you'll be removing it?
Yes.
Because I'm quite sure that if they went a lot long and found it missing, there'd be questions asked.
Yeah, we would make every attempt to contact people. If it was, say, a rose bush and there were ashes gardens, then we would offer to move it into the ashes gardens, but they do get problematic in the main cemetery area, particularly when they're okay for a while when they're being looked after, but then they tend to get a bit unruly and grow over other graves.
Marie, just regarding the almost a shrine-like things around some graves and that, when do you actually look at them and really put a halt to that?
Generally, depends when we become aware of it, and often we just give it a little bit of time, but eventually you come to the point where the grass needs to be reinstated, so then we would contact the family and ask them to remove it, or if they didn't want to remove it, then we would.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments?
This one last time.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand what you meant about the text thing. So you're saying that it can't be asked of through this process because it's already been in another process?
Yes, that's right. It's already covered off in another council document, if you like, in the dog control bylaw, and there's also a dog policy underneath that bylaw. And the policy sort of says things like you can't have dogs near kiddies' playground areas and that sort of thing. And I've got it pretty strong in my mind that you can't have them in cemeteries either in that policy.
I think with dogs, you need to be careful because some people love them, others don't and can be intimidated by them. So, if there's an exuberant dog running around, then, it could offend or upset some people. The other thing is if a dog did foul on a grave and the owner wasn't aware of that and able to clean it up, then that would certainly be upsetting for somebody who visited the cemetery and found it. So, I'm a dog owner as well. I like to think I clean up after them and look after them, but that's not always the case.
I'm assuming, not like that that's wrong, but you're talking about dogs being buried with their owners rather than being alive in the cemetery. Is that right?
No, but it's a great idea. No, I was more meaning like under control on a lead to that, particular site, but that's a good idea too, Dave.
I put my foot in it. There is definitely a bylaw of no dogs in cemeteries, so that's ruled you out in that case. Thank you.
Just on that though, is it not better to manage it by not saying anything? Because the overwhelming majority of people that would bring dogs into a cemetery, if they were allowed, are probably people who don't have loved ones buried there. But I'm sure that if you had a very well-behaved pocket pooch in your arms that you brought to go see their master's grave, I don't think, if it wasn't encouraged and officially sanctioned, I don't think anybody would really give you too much hassle without going down the line of making it official. But, it's probably best to be silent on that issue and rather than encourage it. It's kind of like Mandeville parking before it was sanctioned.
silent on it and there is a nuisance, it's then quite difficult to deal with that owner. We'd better, I think, to be upfront and make that known. And if somebody takes the dog in to visit and it doesn't cause any problems and we don't know about it, we're not going to be looking for that. But I do think we need to make rules like that known to people.
That's it. Thank you, Marie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, I'll move that we move back into the meeting. Second, all in favour? Yes, carried. Thank you. Right, there is no correspondence, and the chairperson's report has been reported, so we move that it's been received, please. You need to say that, Thomas. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Matters for information. Items 10.1 to 10.15. Can somebody move that we receive those? Thank you, carried. Thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Members' information exchange. Start with comments and get underway.
Right, so Sunday, the last Sunday being the 4th of October, I helped out with the garage sale trail in Oxford, handing out maps. Pretty busy morning really, probably gave out well into the hundreds of maps, and really was only one grumpy person, complainant. So no, it was a good morning. The only downside was it was a bit windy, but yeah, the town was buzzing all Sunday, so it was good to see. I attended the walking and cycling strategy as a member from Oxford Promotions. Sarah also attended them. I was a bit disappointed to see that the focus was just on cycleways. It wasn't actually really a walking and cycling strategy, it was more just a cycleway strategy. And it would have been good to, if we're going to have an overarching plan, to have one that sort of links together and has a bit of cohesion around the walking and the cycling routes. But I think that's pretty much over now. I attended the All Boards meeting last week, whenever that was, as well as the Points Road. Water scheme meeting. The meeting had a good outcome in the end, but I think it was a pretty muddled way to get there. I think that it could have been, the presentation could have been a wee bit more concise, and actually given a wee bit more. It was a bit confusing for the first half, I felt personally, and I sort of knew what was going on, and I could see why there was a bit of confusion around the room. But in the end, we got to the result we wanted, or the result that was good for the community, so that was good. But also attended an all board chairs meeting with deputy chairs and the mayor. Probably the main thing that was talked about there was the long-term plan and just the direction that we're sort of probably looking at heading in over the next 6 months. And the fact that the board, there was a bit of a feeling from all the board chairs that it would be good to have a workshop this side of Christmas around the sort of, and work out our priorities and stuff going into that process. So when we do come to make a submission, we sort of know what we're talking about. But all in all, I thought that was a good meeting. There was also the idea of a karakia before all board meetings was raised, and that's something that this board, I think, should workshop on. Doug mentioned it in his chairperson's report. but yeah, I think it would be something, a good thing for the board to sit down and have a bit of a conversation about in a workshop setting. And then the only other thing I've got is the Oxford Community Trust's AGM is on the 13th of October, which is coming up. It's at the A&P rooms of the Oxford Town Hall, so anyone's welcome to attend if they would like.
Sarah.
First up was on the 10th of September was a cycleways network meeting. From that meeting we had to put some ideas down on a network map. Christine Pratt is appointed in the outlook for this cycleways network. It's completely urban focused. There's no focus on rural areas at all. I suggested that we look at creating cycleways connecting homes to schools and homes to other community areas within our rural areas. And the comment was that the funding is driven for urban areas and around the population it serves. We had put in our annual plan to council about these particular cycleways and walkways for our rural areas. Their response was, there is a cycleways network group being created that will cover that. So that's an incorrect response because cycleways network is saying no, it's not what their funding is going to be used for. So that leaves our rural areas basically out of this initiative, which I find very disappointing. So that. Now, I keep fighting our battle though. 16th of September I met with staff in regards to the Crossroads, and they are going to look at some minor works at this stage that may deter the behaviour that's going on and increase the safety for the area. So we're hoping that they will have a look into it and they will get back to us as to what they are proposing before they go ahead and do anything. And yesterday, 6th of October, was a WAG meeting. There's quite a large focus on mental health services at the moment and ensuring that there's enough of them to meet the needs, and a new initiative started up called Hip and Coaches, and it started up at certain doctors' surgeries in Rangiora and Kaipoi, and then is hoping to extend out. So you can go to a doctor, and if you have many mental health issues, and there is someone there that can work with you, more looking at short-term mental health issues. And also council community team are looking at making services that are available a bit more user orientated, so to cover for people that may be looking for food bank services or help in any other way that don't usually fit the usual customer. So people that are in a situation that may not usually be in this situation because of maybe their business is not doing so well or whatever, but they usually wouldn't be the sort of people to access such services, but make it so that they don't have to go to a person to be able to access it. They can access it themselves, so be a bit more discreet, I suppose, about it. So I think that's a really great idea. They're working really hard on lots of good things for COVID recovery and things. That does me.
Right.
10th of September, I went to the Ohoka Drainage Advisory Group and meeting in Kaipoi. Various issues were discussed. One that was...
Right.
Will I stay okay?
No, it's fine.
No. One topic of interest was the idea of wetlands in the Ohoka area, and that there are pockets of calcine lands and that they could well be utilised as natural wetland areas to help improve water quality and control flooding. But there were some negative comments about this and the ability to be able to maintain these waterways if they were indeed to become wetlands. Investigations are ongoing for proper places for riparian plantings adjacent to the waterways to assist with the maintenance of the drains and water races throughout the Ohoka area, and also questions were again asked about the flood mitigation. What is the council doing in Swannanoa and Mandeville as regards to flood mitigation? The answer was something like that investigations were continuing this financial year, but any construction of land works is not likely to occur in the next 3 years. 15th of September there was a natural disaster workshop in Rangiora where the natural disasters, risk of liquefaction, ejecta, flooding, earthquake fault lines, coastal erosion and tsunami, which could well affect resource consent applications and building consent applications. And these natural disaster maps, as we know now, are all being updated on the website. The other interesting thing was that we were divided into groups, and there were different scenarios that were played out in these groups, and they varied from you would deal with an ordinary old small shed being built in the middle of a rural farm, how that right the way through to how we would consider a nuclear power station being proposed in the middle of Rangiora. Quite interesting how people decided on how the different planners should approach the different scenarios. And then that evening there was an all boards meeting in Renewal, an update on the Three Waters status. And then I had a discussion out at West Eaton with the Oaks Reserve group just regarding the Community Board Landscaping grant of $5,000 that we had given to them, and just explained that there was a time limit on that, and that they're putting it out to the community for more general discussion. The 22nd of September, the Mandeville Sports Club had their AGM in Mandeville. Important points to come out of that is the new toilet block that the council are funding. Construction is about to start there. Many positive comments about the new caterer, and news that the strategic plan is almost finalised. 24th of September, there was a public meeting, the Points Road Water Supply in Oxford, and generally the residents seem to be in favour of the council's new plan, whereby the residents of Points Road would join the West Eaton scheme. 28th of September, there's an all boards meeting in Kaipoi. I won't go into too much detail there because I think most people were there. And on yesterday, I attended a great power meeting in Rangiora. Points to come out of that is that the changes to the home care were again discussed, but that it was difficult meeting with the CDHP because there was so many resignations of important staff, and it was very difficult to get actual decisions on exactly what is going to be happening with aged care for the elderly. And note that there is eye care now. There's an ophthalmologist in Rangiora, but the cancer infusion treatment is only available in Amberley or Kaipoi, and not in Rangiora or Oxford. But at least it is out here now. Cycleways came up for discussion, and many asked the question: are they able to use their mobility scooters on the proposed cycleways and the existing cycleways? And what about for people who just want to walk? Grey Power are presenting a petition to the government re the aged and disabled who are not having access to IT when it's so important now that for everything from banking through to retailing, and it's becoming a real issue for some of the elderly, and it was noted that probably in 20 years' time it won't be an issue because everybody reaching that particular age will be relatively competent in IT. Men Sheds provided a pamphlet on budget coffins, which was pretty well received. Pine coffins at a very reasonable rate. Then we had a guest speaker from the fire risk management in the home, which was very informative, in that anyone over the age of 60 is able to have their smoke detectors checked at home, and if found faulty can be replaced free of charge. So I think a lot of the members there were going to be taking advantage of that. Another speaker talked on Parkinson's, and something like about 3,000 Canterburyans suffer from this particular disease, all the way through to from 20-year-olds to very elderly, and it seems that it is able to be managed fairly well now with drugs. That one thing I didn't realise is that you can't die from Parkinson's, but you can die with Parkinson's, and it's excuse me, a debilitating disease that we all know. But there are a lot of things that can be done to improve the life of sufferers. And that's all I have. I had a number of questions that I was going to ask through the board, but is this a relevant time, Tia? Or should I wait for another time?
And do it in members forum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so members forum later.
Okay.
Shirley.
On the 8th of September, I attended the Waimakariri Access Group meeting. There was a PowerPoint presentation done by Karina, who's the lady from the Low Vision Foundation, and it was about issues that people are finding in shopping centres. There's an awful lot that the disabled and the low vision people actually do come across, and then they went out for an exercise in Kaiapoi, but I didn't participate in that. I was too frightened to. I did attend the Points Road Water scheme meeting, and yes, it would have been nice if the council had have sort of said what they were really going to do at the very beginning, which would have saved a lot of time. On the 28th of September, there was a combined community board, and those people that were there would have heard my comments about the visitor strategy. I am concerned that ENC is going to be very involved with that, even though it has been told to me that that it's going to be driven by the Waimakariri District Council. Out of the 28 objectives, the ENC are going to be responsible for 20 of them, and I have been involved since the early 1990s with promotion of the Waimak and then the Oxford promotions, and really we need to promote our district, and I don't believe unless they change their system it's not going to happen, and it was alluded to that they won't change their website the way they do it. You have to be a business partner, which I have been right from day one till last year. You have to pay again. So, like Oxford has 2 food places to eat at on there. The farmers market and cruisy days. They have 4 activities, and one is the town hall. I mean, I don't know how we can actually get our district promoted better. So maybe it's something we all need to look at, because the council are really giving the promotion again back to ENC and Visit Waimakariri. So there does need to be something done, and I don't really know what. And that's all I've got.
It seemed to be that during the month, the 1 week I took off on a holiday, everyone decided to have their meetings that week, so But obviously with everyone else, I attended the Points Road water meetings. The opportunity for me as the chair of the West End Summerhill group is to try and find some common ground with my group that we can put to the table of the Points Road group if they wish to negotiate to get on the scheme. So I think great progress has been made with the council, the government funding, but there's going to be quite a bit of work still to do to actually agree on the final outcomes of doing the two schemes. And obviously when that comes before this board, I will step back because I'm a chair of the scheme and also a ratepayer under the water scheme. Attended an OPEC meeting on behalf of the board. I was blown away that one business actually sent a staff member along, I think, which was great because we're still 4 board members there and a few other people. But I'm surprised still at the lack of business people that come to those meetings. The OPEC thing, Oxford-Ohoka actually came, and they're still trying to recruit a secretary treasurer, are we? Yeah. The Mandeville Sports Club AGM, my summary would be very positive feedback at the meeting, and I think the entire AGM took 31 minutes to get through, which is pretty good. I talked with the West End Board Chair regarding the own reserve. I couldn't go, so thank you to Ray for deputising for me for that meeting. I will catch up with the Garden Club and the school also to coordinate all that. In that same week was an Oxford Rural Drainage meeting, and thank you for Doug for deputising for me on that one. And the last thing I had was an email from a ratepayer who had a building on the property next door put up. Council had signed off on drainage consent. There was an issue with drainage. She was getting a little bit annoyed at progress. She reached out to me purely because she knows me through equestrian circles and through talking with getting advice and how we should handle it. Council staff have since been, I think, gone out to see the ratepayer, and has been identified there's been an issue with the drainage design, and they're going to arrange contractors to come in and try and rectify it. So nice little win for the ratepayer.
Can I just comment on Mark's comment regarding Oxford Promotions and the businesses? The retail businesses haven't attended, but I also know that the Renewal business, the network ones, no, very, very few retailers go. They are the big businesses and service providers, like the electrician or something like that. So I don't know whether it's something that retailers don't want to do.
Wendy in the councillor's report.
Right, very quickly, I've got quite a bit of stuff, but it's very good. Now, first of all, I would just like to mention that the Waimakariri District Council has lost a very valuable person, Yolanda Simon. Very sad indeed, 54 years of age, to cancer, so it's just ghastly. So we're all very thoughtful for all the staff that they going through this grief at the moment. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the All Boards meeting, nor could I go to other things that I had, because I had vertigo and I wasn't really fit to be doing anything. And I missed out on the, because I chair the project group for the indoor court facility, so I missed out on the roof shout. But I'm just going to see this around for you to have a look at just how the stadium's producing and growing in now. So that's the other thing I want to bring you up to is that there's going to be a one-stop shop event for rural waste recycling. And the Waimakariri District Council on Monday the 2nd of November, it will be in Oxford. So the farmers do have to register online there, so I'll pass that around there. The other thing that I just quickly need to say to you about, and from my community and recreation hat on here, that on tomorrow, Thursday, in the libraries, the children are having a popular mystery trail. This is for Renewal tomorrow and Oxford on Friday, and they've got to go around and find all different types of jungle animals, so it'll be really exciting for them to enjoy stuff. The library, I will say, the library is absolutely buzzing, and it's absolutely such a delight to see. Indeed, it's really, the aquatics facility also is buzzing with new things that are happening in their area, and there's a new inflatable, and when you're a big inflatable gets a big thumbs up from its kids during school holiday time. So there's lots of little things that are happening that they're really giving the children a pretty good run on doing different thing. The other thing that I'd just like to briefly bring up, because I am on the age-friendly group, I just feel that looking at what the council has put together for staying socially connected, I'm afraid there's quite a lot of stuff in our rural towns that are just not even being put onto here. So I just think I think this is already going out, so we need to address this and go through, because there's it's really important that for people to go and have a cup of tea and things like that, and we need to be where they become the socially, but with cabin fever and things like that, they can come in and have a cup of tea and get to say hello to people and become more part of our community. It's really important, because the elderly will hide away because it's easier that way. So I'll just leave like that. I've got a whole lot of stuff, but truthfully at the time we're getting away with it. Well, the last thing I'd like to say, I really would like to congratulate the Oxford Rural Drainage Advisory Group. They're a very proactive group. They are very well connected with the area, and they are pretty frugal and very caring people.
Thank you for that great update, Wendy. I suppose a lot of the things that I would talk about have probably crossed over. On the 9th of September, we had the Tiatiawa working group meeting, and what that is that when we're talking about mapping rivers and things and planting them, that kind of goes hand in hand with that. At the moment, they're mapping the Cam River stream works for a project at present, but they'll hope to roll that out to other rivers and streams later on. But yeah, gotta start somewhere. The Prevention of Alcohol and Drug Harm Steering Group also met and debriefed after the Pat Buckley tour, but we welcomed Grant Harris, who has just wonderfully fallen in our lap. He is, he works with the City Mission for as a rehab counselor, and he'll be a really great asset for us to have in the district with his knowledge and experience. On the 10th of September, I had the privilege of judging the North Canterbury Primary Schools debating semifinals, which were between Ohoka 1 and Ohoka 2 and Lilburn and Ashgrove. And there's four schools put on really awesome performances. It was really quite cool to watch. And then I went to the Oxford Rural Drainage Advisory Group meeting, which is in the chairman's report and has been discussed by Ray, so I'll leave that there. On the 11th of September was the Greater Christchurch Partnership meeting. I don't know who here has seen anything about the engagement or survey about what you would like the Greater Christchurch area, Greater Christchurch 2050 to look like. Has anyone seen that? Because there's a survey that's gone live as of the 5th of October. It runs to the 8th of November. Please go have a look. It's on www.greaterchristchurch.org.nz. It's really important planning document for them to consult with people and see what they think. If they're heading in the right direction with the Greater Christchurch, which of course that encompasses Selwyn, Waimakariri, as well as Christchurch City, and just what we want the city to look, and the Greater Christchurch area to look like. Anyhow, go have a look at that. Ray mentioned that there was on the 15th of September a district planning and regulation briefing on natural hazards. That was quite a cool exercise. It was quite fascinating to see people's appetite for risk with regard to natural hazards, and that is going to be some really important work that will go into how we draw up the district plan with what's permitted, not permitted, what needs consents, etc., so on. So that was quite a cool exercise. The utilities and roading has, and at council later, we have in fact, as per recommendation by this board, closed the stockwater race at Sienna Place, which we have all talked about. That just got the final tick of approval yesterday. They are also undertaking an Ohoka water safety plan, which, although not legally required for supplies under 500 households, is going to be undertaken anyway because it's just good practice. So that's underway. I also went to the all boards briefing, and you guys are all there. So on the 17th of September, I met with Dave Taylor from Land Care and Glenn Michael from BioHelp. They fascinating gentleman regarding a locally produced product that can sustainably and more cost-effectively increase productivity of soils, which could be of use to local farmers, lifestylers, and also the Council for Lands, for Council on Land and Reserves. So that might be interesting to look into. And then I'll skip over all of that. The 23rd of September, Wendy and I and the mayor and some of our staff and NZTA staff met with Tina Dudley, whose daughter was recently in a car accident at the Tram Road motorway off-ramp, just to discuss and explore options for improving the safety at that intersection. So I think that was quite a productive meeting. At the time, the speed limit where that happened would have been 50 kilometers an hour. But it still happened because the car that pulled out in front of the person coming down Tram Road couldn't see. They were in a car, a low vehicle, and there was really no place to go, so it did cause some harm. And they really, that's a terrible intersection, and it has been forever. And fingers crossed they're finally going to be able to maybe do something about that. But, that's in the works at the moment. On that same day, there was the local welfare committee Roundup, which is a whole group of Waimakariri social services providers that have been meeting since lockdown, just to share information and resources about community needs. But as things seem to have settled down, for now, the meetings have been discontinued. The regular meetings have been discontinued until further notice if needed. Yesterday was a council meeting, which I probably discussed all the exciting things in that. And the last thing for me, on the 15th of October, at long last, Mark, we are finally going to have the first meeting of the elected members Sustainability Steering Group. Hallelujah. Woo! What have I forgotten?
Your appointment as an observer.
Gosh, so many, very, very many things. I have, Well, yes, I have been appointed as an observer to the Christchurch City climate change coastal working group, and why I've been appointed and what that really means as an observer is that I hold the climate change and sustainability portfolio, and whilst I don't have voting rights or anything like that, we all share the same coastline. An earthquake or tsunami or climate change doesn't go, that's Christchurch City and that part's Waimakariri. So it's quite important to be able to work with our partners on the other side of the river mouth. So have I missed anything else? There's been an awful lot going on. I've actually missed an awful lot because I was away for a week. When did you go on the trip to the on the northern corridor? Nobody can regale us with tales of how awesome that's going to be. Anyway, that is hoping to open about the 20th of December, the new corridor. But I was away and didn't get to go and look at it, darn it. So, anybody else in this room go? No? Bummer. Okay, well, sorry, I can't tell you about that. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you, gentlemen. Which meeting? Oh, the 15th of October. Did you get an email from Mike O'Connell? No, I didn't. Okay. I think he's at 1:30. I don't. Yeah. I'll see if I can.
I'll follow up and let Mark know exactly when the meeting and the venue and everything is.
Thank you.
I did see an email tonight when I checked.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the venue has been set yet. I just know that the date is.
They set a time or something.
1:30 and town hall function room 1:30 p.m.
We're going to notice, it's just fantastic.
What's it?
About notice you get about meetings coming up. So that was feedback to council. Yeah, it'd be nice to know that earlier.
That's interesting because you're included on this. And on the email. Well, that's a shame.
I'll follow that.
Any questions?
I've got a comment. I'm very concerned about this greater Christchurch thing that we're going to end up being like Auckland, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be working under a council like the Christchurch Council.
I don't think that the idea is not for us to amalgamate into a super city. The whole idea of us working together is so that they don't try to make us amalgamate as a super city, because there are things that we do need to work together on, and there are synergies to be had and skills, economies of scale, and also when it comes to infrastructure and things like transport corridors and whatnot, there are things that it's definitely in our best interest to work together on, lest they do think it might be a good idea to become a super city, which I agree with you would not be my idea of a great thing either. But please, by all means, go and do the survey. It's kind of unfortunate that it's called Greater Christchurch, maybe, in some people's eyes, and they think that we're all being squished into a super city, but it does really encapsulate the way we all kind of think of ourselves. I mean, probably most people, if you were away from home and you ran into somebody overseas, or where are you from, you'd probably just say Christchurch rather than, Oxford-Ohoka or Ohoka or Oxford, because...
No, we're always Oxford.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. I retract that statement, but yeah.
Thomas,
Yeah, just one thing I forgot. I've had 3 or 4 people talk to me over the last month about the pool opening date in Oxford. It's also been on Oxford Chit Chat. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but a bit of concern from a few people around the opening dates of that, and the fact that I don't think it's open until late November, and a few people are disappointed. I think it's probably something that the board should have a discussion about at some point, and how we can make that work slightly better for the community. Because it's a good facility, and it's only open for 4 months a year. It's sort of not being used to its full potential.
Thomas, do you want to talk to me later about it?
Just if we're having discussion now, with regard to E&C and driving the visitors strategy. I have asked in the past, like, how many Oxford businesses interact with the NC, and because that concerns me as well. Is there perhaps something that we as a board can do to suggest that perhaps ENC reach a little bit further? Because ENC does work on behalf of the entire district, but it doesn't always feel that way, I think, for a lot of businesses further west, shall we say. Would that be fair?
Well, the position is you have to be a business partner to be on the website and also get the information of the courses they run. They're double dipping in a way, because those businesses are paying rates, but this chief executive or whatever it is of ENC was adamant they wouldn't change the way the website is done. You have to pay, because they couldn't afford to actually put all of the businesses who are in like hospitality and the retail and eating and that on it. They don't believe they could actually do that, but we were part of 100% Pure New Zealand for a long time. They've got thousands of people on it, and I don't think it's a big deal, but I just don't know about the thinking.
Right. Can we move on, please? It's very good. Dear Head finished at 9 o'clock on the way past that. Now, item 12, consultation projects. Nothing we need to do about that at this point. Board funding update. Board discretionary grant at 9,624, less what we allocated tonight. General landscaping fund at 6,490. There are no media items, no questions understanding orders, no to general business understanding orders. So, I will therefore close the meeting at this point. And we'll move to the workshop.
She's just going to shut down now.
Yes. Brian, you're next. You've been very patient, thank you. Sorry that it's dragged out so long.
Good evening, everyone. I don't think I've been to one of these board meetings. So my name is Ryan O'Loughlin. I'm part of the community recreation team and look after, we have a focus on the capital projects and assets within our parks and reserves and community facilities. So the purpose of coming on tonight, as you're aware of, obviously you guys are coming into the LTP. We're going to have a session with each of the boards just to go through at this stage what we've got in the long-term plan and to get an idea of any areas of concern or focus that the board would like staff to consider. So as you'll be aware, obviously with COVID-19, there are a number of measures that staff took to reduce budgets for this current financial year. Parks and reserves, we chose to forego a number of our renewal budgets, including roads and car parks, hardcore renewals, and our general landscape renewal budgets, which is the gardens and trees. The intention is that these get added back in next financial year, as it was always intended only be for 1 year as a cost-saving measure. We've obviously still got focus on keeping the rates down as part of this LTP, and at this stage we've not included any large projects for that. Within parks and reserves, we've obviously got a focus on renewing and maintaining our existing asset network. So at this stage, the three projects that I've got within the budget from last LTP are the Kirkwhite Street Reserve. It's currently in 21-22 financial year. It's proposed to push this out 1 year. We've got East Earton Domain Development in 27-28 financial year, and the West Oxford Reserve Toilet next financial year, which will be done in conjunction with tourism infrastructure funding, if we can get that to fund a lot of that toilet. The current projects we've got this financial year, just for reference, we've also got the manual toilet, which has been spoken about tonight, and then we're also putting in a flag track system across the district, which does include the flags in Oxford. So happy to take any questions or anything the board may have around capital projects for the LTP, parks and reserves and community facilities.
Just what did you say, D flags? Is it the street flags?
So it's the flag track system for the street flags, the Christmas flags that have been put up. It just saves getting a cherry picker and all that, can be done by hand. So.
On the flags, we need to use these. Christchurch City Council just have a man that drives along at night and goes up in a bucket and changes them. Why can't we do that? It just seems like I quite often do nights in the centre of Christchurch, and he would just drive along, put some cones out around him, be gone in 10 minutes and it's done. It just seems like such a simple system when we make it such a palaver, to be honest.
I think that's the point of going with the flag track system, that we can have someone just on the ground come along and put them up.
Yeah, but this is just a man in a cherry picker. He's got a truck, he just drives along, goes up, changes it, comes down, it's done. I just don't know why that's not an option out here, but...
But what is the difference between what Oxford's got now? I thought they were sort of doing
So this is the actual rail system that will just run them up, rather than actually requiring a cherry picker.
It's like you turn up the old flag. Yeah. Because she's ready to put it all to bed. Ryan, so for the West Oxford toilet, you're going to put that back down, and hopefully that government will be putting a bit of money into going up your tourism by that stage.
So that was in, I think, originally 27, 28.
It was.
It's good for take advantage of that tourism infrastructure funding and go on the same sort of curriculum.
Someone doesn't come forward.
We would be pushing it back out.
Yeah, we'll have to push it back out. But we'll get 50-50 on it, would be ideal.
And so, sorry, I'm kind of coming a little bit behind with all this. So you've got a list of projects there that we just said that are happening. That's great. So for the long-term plan, so are you looking for?
This is to get a bit of an idea from the board if there's any areas of concern that may have on their parks and reserves or community facilities that we would need to put a project up as part of LTP. My understanding is that Gold Park has been put forward as a board submission, so it would need to be included on this end.
Okay, and how much time do we have to discuss this and put forward ideas?
In terms of timeframes to go to the council or tonight?
So we'll probably have a couple of workshops at this stage. I think that's what we're looking at doing. Having one this side of Christmas and sort of look at more ideas sort of things, and then sort of come back after Christmas and sort of more sort of look at the actual wording of the projects we're looking at doing. So this is probably more just at the very start of things if I'm sort of getting things. So probably not necessarily looking for ideas, more directions tonight, isn't it? Yeah. So it's not.
Go through that list again. Sorry, I missed some.
Sure. So the three main projects that we've got for the award at the moment is Kirk High Street Reserve. That was in 21-22, but we're proposing to push that out just with the way the figures are, looking with COVID, trying to balance capital projects, pushing out 1 year. East Eaton Plain Development in 27-28, and the West Oxford Reserve Toilet next financial year. We also do have a number of other district renewal budgets that we can see applied to the board all the districts there.
So what are you planning on doing on the Carlos Street reserves, because I thought Keep Oxford Beautiful had done planting in that in there.
So my understanding is this is the installation of the pedestrian lighting along the walkway between Kōwhai Street and Main Street.
So we could have pedestrian lighting in Pearson Park.
I'd have to ask the question. This is just the detail I have for this project.
I think that's probably quite an important one because for people that don't know it, there's a big row of like a macrocarpa hedge, isn't there, Shirley? And then there's a row of redwoods behind it, so it's actually really dark. It's dark all day during winter, and it's quite a long footpath. Like it's probably 500 metres, do you reckon?
Well, Ryan knows it anyway.
Yeah. Just to probably explain to other board members. Yeah.
So that's something we could include in the long term.
Yeah, I think it's probably something we should be advocating for, and.
So is there anything else one another?
Yeah, well, that's what.
You know what it's like.
See, this is the sort of thing I've sort of I've had an initial discussion with Brian at Swannanoa School. The type of thing that I think would be really beneficial if before anything got set in stone would be go to the schools and say, hey, look, give us some ideas. What do you guys want to see in your community? And they would be thrilled to have the chance to, the schools can even put it in as one of their term projects where the kids have to come up with certain designs and be part of the process. This is exactly the type of relation that I'm kind of hoping to build with to encourage better relations with council and communities through that avenue. So I think that this would be a perfect chance to do that. And I'm really happy to work alongside you guys if you want to go to do anything like that, to work with the schools in our ward.
Yeah, that is definitely some good feedback to have in terms of touching base with those sorts of groups for those projects throughout the district.
So if you gave us enough, I guess because I'm new, I don't really know the timeframes and things, but if I had enough warning as to when these things were coming up and the timeframes, then I can get to the schools and say, hey, look, this is coming up. If you've got a chance, put it in your curriculum or put it in or do it as a week project and send the ideas to the council. But because
I was just going to say that would also be something if as Thomas mentioned about the board going through their projects that they would like to put forward as part of the board submission, that would also be good. Kind of look back through that.
Sarah, is there a park, a playground for the children at Swannanoa other than can people play in the school grounds?
Well, they can play in the school grounds, I guess, yeah, but they can't, which is the whole point of like the paths and cycleways, because you can't get there. But yeah, I know that Swannanoa School they sent out a thing they're wanting to do a BMX track at the school, and I just think that might be something that they could receive some help with, because kids can go down there and it could be a community thing. I don't know. But
excuse me, Sarah, we will set up a formal workshop to cover all this stuff later.
Yeah, I just don't want to be too late, because schools are going to end up they're going to need a good term.
I think that's where the idea of having two this time came from, because in the past we've tried to do it with one, and it's sort of just everyone sort of tried to chuck as much stuff on there as possible and just sort of make a bit of a random list, whereas it's good to have a bit of time to go around these groups and actually, if we have ideas, canvass them with them and see if they're actually good ideas, because
that's right. Well, the best people that know their own community are the people that live in them.
Yeah.
So
just a quick question. What did we submit on Fruit Slate and got a response back when you presented to the council? Is that annual plan or long-term plan?
Annual.
Because it was the annual.
Anyway,
So Mandeville have just done their sufficient long-term plan now. So when is the cut-off to get this done?
In terms of the board submission?
This board doing a submission to the long-term plan.
so they're probably submitting it to get it into the draft plan, whereas we can submit on the draft plan, if you know what I mean.
The council will be meeting the plan.
public, so the board can actually have input to the draft plan, but also more formally through the public submission. That's so you're expecting that public submissions probably March.
So would that then be around about the time where, say, schools would make a submission to a long-term
It's
plan?
public submissions on the long term.
So that's when it would be appropriate for a school
well
to put.
publicised.
Yeah.
Public submission.
Yeah, so it wouldn't hurt though if I started getting in contact with these schools and just saying, hey, look, this is going to be coming up. If you do want to put it in, because term 4's are really starting, so we're only the beginning of term 1.
That's fine. It's exactly the same way that Ryan and his crew are working on their draft.
Right.
Put into the long term. Everyone's sort of trying to get it done before Christmas because the council's going to be considering a 2-day period.
It actually needs to be on council public land, not school land.
Yes, I understand that. And that's also why I wanted to meet with, I don't think it was you, I think it was Grant, about where are all these reserves and stuff in our district. So where are they and
Just want to know what you're
We can take you through that because we've got all the parks that around here. We've got a list, and here's what that park strategy thing here do there. Yeah, I think we better give Sarah something like that to look at.
It'd probably be good to look at, if we're looking at that though, look at the parcels of land that aren't actually
unused
recreation reserves as well though, the old gravel pits and stuff like that.
Exactly right, yeah. Because there's one down the corner just right next to the Woodend School, like where the water tanks and things are. It's just a gorse land.
Well, it depends on what its status is.
Yeah, well, it's
So,
nothing. Well, yes, status, but yeah, it's not being used.
Forestry reserve or
Could
something.
be, yeah, that's right. But it'd be nice to know where all those little pockets were.
Well, some of the small pockets we can't because it's under the property management thing. So, and we're going through a process at the moment looking at all these parcels of land that we can either acquire or move on. But we're actually looking at parklands, park sites, basically, areas that, or like that White's Road Reserve where they've done planting, and those are the sort of things that you look at if you want to be part of something. And that's Swananoa School was part of it.
The White's Road, yeah.
So those are little things that you can look at. It's the same as Clarkville with Silverstream. They do planting down there, Silverstream Reserve. So you can look at little things that the children might like to be part of to embrace the environment. Just like Hoka with the Hoka Bush thing, there's a lot of work done there, which council does a certain amount of money to. So it's all part of getting the children into thinking about